I think it's safe to say that every single one of us were patiently waiting for Premier League duties to return, and we had high expectations for Brentford. And those expectations nearly materialized into 3 points as we saw Moises Caicedo's pile driver set to mount an epic comeback against Brentford, only for Chelsea to let the lead slip in the dying moments of the game, allowing Brentford to equalise. So tonight, my friends, I'm here to give you 5 key takeaways from Chelsea 2, Brentford 2. For the first thing learnt, were Chelsea robbed from gaining 3 points at the G-Tech Community Stadium. Now, at the time when I was watching this game in real time, my mind wasn't even thinking about questioning the VAR call. I just accepted that because mentally my focus was on the disappointment at blowing such a late lead in a stadium where we're notoriously getting draws and not getting wins. So my focus wasn't there. But once the dust settles, not for myself, but for all of us started to analyze what exactly went on. And through analysis, the entire situation emerges in a completely different light. Because for myself, I feel like we were robbed. Now, I know what some man might be thinking, and fair enough. Nini, throughout the season, we've had VAR working in our favour, right? Look at the game against Fulham. Fair enough, I get that. But I don't believe that notion that we should accept the fact that, things worked in our way. So it's not a big deal if one works against us. Listen, these guys should be getting these decisions right 10 out of 10 on a weekly basis. They have teams. They can freeze frame. They have VAR. It should be minimizing errors even more now. And if anything, I feel like we paid the price for the national outcry, which baffled me, by the way, from when Fulham didn't get that goal through Joshua King. For me, it was a straight foul. We've seen many moments like this throughout many seasons, and no one's shown dissent towards that. People have just accepted that. But I feel like sometimes in the Premier, when narratives get really powerful in this league, that definitely plays a part, I think, in maybe obscuring how objective these refereeing teams will be in these key decisions. And I guarantee they're thinking, you know what, we can't deny Brentford this late equaliser. And for me, I don't think it's fair. I think every decision that VAR's helped us has been the correct one. And I think last night should have been another correct decision in our favour. Now, you're seeing from the still frames that Otar was standing in an offside position at the moment the touch was made by Aya, or Aja, whatever his name is. The minute he flicks that ball on from the near post, that's contact being made, which means... And in that moment, Dango, who was the player in the offside position, attempts to now play the ball, and he's now obscuring Reece James. He's getting in front of him. He's blocking his vision. He's still in that offside position. And obviously, the interference of Reece James is just like adding salt to the wounds. For me, it's kind of mad. I don't really care if people are like, it's the game, live with it. Listen, clubs like Liverpool, I used to see Man United and co. Madrid, you get these decisions in your way. You're entrusting that the team on the field is going to get the right decision in your favor, because there's a massive difference between 1 point and 3. And with how tight the season's set to be, you need to gain every marginal opportunity in your favor. So you guys, leave your thoughts below. In my opinion, I think we were robbed. And it's kind of baffling that this decision was not ruled offside. But how are you feeling about things? Let us know below. Jamie Gittens needs time. I feel like I have to say this because a lot of us probably are placing high expectations on him after we overpay for his services in the summer window. But I don't think that's the right mentality to have. The guy's only young. He had difficulties in his second half of the season with Borussia Dortmund. It wasn't his best account of football. He's still finding himself, but most importantly, I think he is adjusting to life in the system, playing with his teammates, and getting used to the tempo of the Premier League. I don't think it's fair for the fan base to start questioning the validity behind his signing. Let's afford this kid a little bit of grace. Let's not act like we've clocked his entire career map at the football club in a handful of games. But at the same time, even though we can have patience for him, we can also discuss his game against Brentford and discuss the difficulties. And I think difficulties is a fair analysis of Gittens' game versus Brentford. He was up against a really tough opponent in Coyote. With Coyote, he can match Gittens band for band when it comes to that pace. And Gittens was not able to complete one dribble against him. A few times he tried to come inside and he showed a bit more promise combining with his teammates. But I think if there was one area that was very obvious to me that Gittens was failing in, that was in understanding the movements with his teammates. On a few occasions, you notice how Chelsea players were regularly looking to play balls in behind down the left-hand side. That was clearly part of the game plan to play through Brentford's. Outside of a few short passes in the direction of Gittens, I thought most times Gittens was kind of slow mentally here, and he wasn't reading the movements quickly enough to anticipate his teammates' passes. And on a few occasions, he let the possibilities and the potential of a few moves down. And there are improvements you want to see. Maresca afforded him a bit more time in the second half, but from the 56th minute, I think he realized, you know what, it's more important that we go for it now. Palmer's coming on, Gittens, you're coming off, and I think that's fair. In my opinion, I think maybe Gittens needs to be introduced more as a super sub, and I think maybe he starts the cup games at the moment. I think he has some talent. I'm not going to forget some of the footwork that we saw during pre-season, some of those electric moments, but at the same time, I'm not going to deny the fact that sometimes playing as a Chelsea winger, it can be pretty hard. And we saw that last season, for example. If the team isn't firing on all cylinders, sometimes it can be hard for a winger when you have 2v1 against you, or when you're feeling that pressure to have to succeed in your 1v1 to make possibilities happen for the team. I'm going to have some patience with Gittens. I kind of expected that this kid was going to need some months to get used to the tempo and the aggression. There's more to come from him, but at the moment, with a squad like this, you have to fight for your spot, and I'd be surprised if he starts the next game. But what's your thoughts on Gittens? Do you have hope and faith in the kid? Or do you feel like you've seen the story before already? Let me know right now. Cole Palmer is still the top dog at Chelsea Football Club. We've been patiently waiting for him to return back from injury, and on the 56th minute of the game, Maresca said, Palmer, it's time to get on that field. And in the space of 5 minutes, Cole Palmer had equalised in the game. Joao Pedro cushioned down an excellent header into the path of Cole Palmer, who only had to open his body up and nonchalantly slot that ball in the bottom left corner. He brought us back in the game. But what I've really loved about Cole Palmer's performance is how he basically makes his team come to life. And you could see that with the intelligent positions he's picking up between the lines. All of a sudden, you're seeing line-breaking passes coming back into Chelsea's game. And the reason why they can't get executed is because Cole Palmer is a scanning merchant. I don't know if you guys have seen this 90s film called Jacob's Ladder, but the way Cole Palmer scans his head at all times, it kind of reminds me of that film low-key. And this is like one of the great aspects behind how he is so able to affect a game and inject what a game needs. Palmer was regularly receiving between the lines, attracting the attention of Brentford players, creating space for his teammates. He also drifted to the left-hand side at times to combine. On a handful of occasions, we saw excellent footwork, creating nothing situations into something. And I think the only thing that was a disappointment in this game was the fact that he probably should have bagged at least 2 goals. He had 2 great opportunities to add to his tally, but I'm going to afford him some grace because he's literally just got back from injury. And I think if Cole Palmer had been playing week in, week out, he'd be match sharp and ready and a lot more clinical in these situations. Still, it's safe to say that if you're a Chelsea fan, it's a very encouraging sign to see Cole Palmer performing like this before we take on Bayern. And you have this feeling that if we get anything against him, it will be Cole Palmer that helps the cause. Buonanotte looked pretty interesting. Now, he surprised all of us by starting as the number 10 in the game today. And I felt like he had a bright first start to the first half, like the first 20-25 minutes, but then kind of cooled down a little bit towards the end. And he had a great moment after some really good play to take his shot and release it early, but instead he looked to play the pass to a teammate instead. And maybe that kind of showcases the lack of confidence because he feels like he's not the top dog yet, and it's better to play the safe pass compared to taking responsibility. I think if you're at Chelsea Football Club though, Buonanotte, you have to take these moments. But I do think that we have seen a few promising signs in his game today to think, you know what, he could be a pretty interesting player to turn to. Now, we learned before the game that during pre-season, he really impressed Enzo Maresca. I think this is why Maresca started him in the game today. There was this friendly game during the international periods where he scored 3 goals in a game. And reports have been mentioning that he's getting the respect and a lot of praise from his teammates internally right now. So they're all encouraging signs that you could see a lot more from Buonanotte. In this game, he played 2 key passes, kickstarting some interesting moves. I like how he spread the ball, played it very quickly, of course, to find Jamie Gittens down the left-hand side. He was also roaming between the lines at times, but I did feel like in certain aspects, maybe he could have called for the ball a little bit more. He could have shot up for it a bit better. He could have been a bit more adventurous, trusting his abilities to carry the ball past teammates. But listen, again, this is someone you have some patience for. Let's see what he can do in future games. He kept things tidy, maybe a bit too tidy at times when there was a few opportunities for him to showcase a half turn or trust his carrying abilities to inject something into the game. But he kept things safe and steady, and maybe Maresca may give him more opportunities in future games. Did Maresca just rotate too much in that first half? Now, we saw a lot of surprise inclusions in the team. Hato, Wesley Fofana, which really took me by surprise. Gittens, Buonanotte. I understand we got Bayern next week, fair enough. But was it just too much? Because for myself, did Maresca feel like he realized he made a mistake, hence why he made all those corrections in the second half? It's not very often you're seeing a triple substitution kicking off a new half of football unless a manager maybe feels like he overdid things in the first half. On one hand, I can kind of understand it because you want to assess what the entire squad can bring during moments where you're going to have to turn towards them, especially with the Champions League kickstarting next week, right? But on the other hand, could we have maybe started with a stronger team or added a bit more balance with rotations, earned the leads, and then naturally look to sub players off for the second half? I'm speaking in hindsight, but I think maybe on this occasion, this would have been the safer option. For myself, I felt like the left-hand side was definitely the weakest part for Chelsea in the game today. And I think this is where Brentford caused us many issues. I thought Hato wasn't necessarily the best account of himself. Not that he was bad, but I just felt like in terms of playing the inverted role in the Premier League, not doing it in pre-season, it's a completely different kettle of fish. And everything we gained from Cucurella, you could definitely see the big difference without Cucurella in this team. I think if Cucu was playing alongside Gittens, it would have helped Gittens a bit more because Cucu knows how to pin someone inside and release his winger on the opposite flank, which is something that Hato didn't quite do. Hato only won 1 out of 4 ground duels. He earned a yellow card. He looked a bit nervy at times. And in terms of on-ball influence, he only played 18 out of 19 passes. I was watching what he was doing off the ball in terms of where he was looking to move inside to receive. And I felt like he wasn't necessarily that option to help us progress as much. I'm not angry with the kids. I've said before we signed him, he clearly will need an adaptation period to adjust to playing in the Premier League. Every kid needs that. He is 19 years old. He is not 29. We can't forget those details. But at the same time, I just felt like with the introduction of him, Gittens, a Buonanotte who's still feeling himself playing his first game for Chelsea, and a Wesley Fofana who still looks quite rusty, in my opinions, wasn't necessarily that assertive in his defensive capacities. It just felt like we played a bit too short in that first half. And in this league, you can't afford to waste any type of time. Just to end this point, when you compare what we did in the second half, everything rose up another level. The first half, we had 70% of the ball with an expected goal threat of 0.36. In the second half, we had 61%, and our expected goal threat rose to 0.86. Not a massive jump, but still a big jump by 0.5. And we also created 2 big chances in the second half compared to 0 in that first half. And most importantly, we doubled our shot capacity 11-5. So clearly, introducing the big boys or having some of their influence in the first half would have improved our attacking play against Brentford. So my friends, these are the 5 things that we learned in tonight's 2-2 draw against Brentford. Hopefully we can learn some lessons in time now before we take on Bayern Munich in our first CL game of the season. So I hope you guys enjoy. Leave your thoughts below. What did you learn? And I'll catch you guys tomorrow. Love. Cool.